Good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. Apology for some technical issues in our at our end. Welcome to the 24th TWG meetings. Today, our chair, Ms. Aruna, is not available, so I will be doing the opening. Most of you probably know me. I'm apart from the statistics division, so it's our pleasure to welcome you to this meeting today. And before we start our today's meeting, we would like to recap. Like last time on the 23rd meeting of the TWG, we have an honor to welcome Maldives, who came and joined us reviewing the DRSF table, particularly for the critical infrastructure and for agriculture damage. Yeah. And for this meeting, we will be looking into the table on disaster related risk reduction expenditure, or DRRE. And of course, we have a pleasure to welcome our master of DRRE of satellite accounting team from the Philippines Statistical Authority, PSA. And yeah, we would like to again thank you, like a PSA team, for making your time and joining us today. So next bit in the agenda, we will firstly I will pass the floor to my colleague Hakan Yasusioglu. He will be talking, discussing an overview of the DRI tables before we moving into the real technical experience of the Philippines. Yeah, Hakan, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much for.
You have to mute.
Mute.
Mute one. Okay.
There's an okay. Huh. Sorry for the inconvenience. There's an echo issue, I guess. Thank you for joining us today for the review of the disaster risk reduction expenditure account tables in the DRSF. And thank you for Vivian and Polaris from Philippines Statistics Authority for reviewing this table in the context of our meeting today. And I would like to share my screen to show you and present the structure of the table of DRS and give you some information about the this expenditure account. Actually, all of us know and experience that the hazardous events and disasters are becoming a fact of our life, and their frequency is increasing. They are occurring regularly, so they are becoming actually more deadly, and they cause human loss, economic loss, and to tackle this issue, more than ever, we need disaster-related statistics to address also this information needs, and also to make the evidence-based decisions at each stage of the disaster risk reduction activities. And also, we know that we do not generally act not in the disaster response during a disaster, but the policy action shift from just response to disaster risk management. So we need to continue to take action to reduce the risks of disasters. we have to make this the risk management. So as we also know that the economic loss attributed to disasters are increasing. So and also Sendai framework targets uh, calls us for action to reduce the global mortality, reduce the number of affected people, reduce the economic loss, reduce the damage to infrastructure and disruption of basic services, and increase the availability and access to multi-hazard early warning systems. So we need to reduce these risks and prevent losses. And to achieve this, what should we do? It is simply we should invest in disaster risk reduction activities. That means we should make expenditures, spend some money on this issue, which is also a smart investment because it saves lives, it prevents losses, and its returns is more than what we spent on these issues. So today's topic is actually the expenditures made on the disasters risk reduction activities. And also, as I stress, we need to increase the production of this related statistics. And as we know, the hazards and disasters are happening randomly. So disaster risk reduction should be a continuous activity needed to strengthen our society's resilience and resistance. So this disaster-related statistics should be compiled on a continuous and periodic basis, and it should be integrated as a domain in the regular production of statistics, maybe as an extension to the existing national accounts. And in this context, I would like to introduce you today our disaster risk reduction expenditure account tables, which are presented in the DRSF. Actually, these tables are recording the expenditures made by the providers of this disaster risk reduction services, which are the institutional sectors by SNA. We can we can list these as providers as non-financial corporations, financial corporations, and general government, households, and non-profit institutions serving households. Actually, this classification of institutional sectors is the classification of SNA, is consistent with SNA structure. So we record these expenditures by this disaggregation. But expenditures on disaster risk reduction activity actually may be difficult to identify and is isolate from the existing transactions because they are not explicitly recorded. So countries generally need to some approach to gather this data from the transactions. There can be actually the DRSF recommends that two approach to gather this information from the existing expenditure transactions. One can be the transactions which occurs during a large-scale disaster recovery and there can be a focus analysis of transfers from relevant institutions and to analyze these transfers and expenditures for a particular geographical region and time period. And this can give an inference, an opinion about the expenditures made by the relevant institutional sectors during the time of the disaster. but it can be actually an estimation and a proxy of the expenditure accounts. And another approach can be to develop a series of functional accounts to track all types of transfers and expenditures in the economy with a specific disaster risk reduction purpose. Actually, in this method, we look to the primary purpose of the expenditure, if it is spent on DRR purpose. And this kind of approach is also applied in other kinds of statistical production like environmental accounts. And this is called generally satellite accounts. It can be also health accounts, tourism accounts, education accounts, environmental accounts. So for disaster risk reduction expenditures, this a disaster risk reduction purpose can be uh, tracked within the related transactions together. This kind of account from the national accounts. And actually, this table, this the risk reduction expenditure account table, focus on the some activities. As you see from the table, disaster risk prevention, disaster risk mitigation, disaster risk management, disaster recovery, and general government research and development and education expenditure. This in this detailed the expenditures are gathered from the national transactions and also from national accounts or other administrative records of the governmental institutions and also other institutional sectors like financial corporations, non-financial corporations. Uh, and we also by adding up these expenditures, the prevention, mitigation, management, recovery, and R&D and education expenditures. This is actually the current expenditures. We have also investments on these disaggregated levels. So by adding this current and current expenditures and investment expenditures, we come up with the activity expenditure account. But to achieve the national disaster risk reduction expenditure, we also need a second table, which is the transfers expenditure table. And we need the net transfers expenditure to get the disaster risk national expenditure. So during a transfer, during a or after or during the preparedness period, a country can get transfers from international institutions. Also, there can be transfers between between public government services, and there can be transfers on risk transfers, insurance premiums, and other kind of disaster-related international transfers, public transfers to private sectors, and private transfers like taxes, voluntary issues. So this kind of transfers paid and received actually gives us the net transfers. So by summing up the total production expenditures with the net transfers, we come up with the country's disaster risk reduction national expenditures. And this account of expenditure accounts and also transfer accounts gives us the following actually indicators or data, like total national expenditure with disaster risk reduction purpose. And disaster risk reduction expenditure by source of financing, like central government, local government, or private sector, and disaster risk expenditures and transfers by beneficiaries. And also we can get information from this table, like disaster risk expenditure by type of disaster risk reduction activity, like disaster preparedness, recovery, reconstruction, uh, and also we can have information on the values of transfers from central government to local authorities, or transfers from international donors to the country. Actually, the structure of the table and the outputs of the tables can be summarized like this. And for further information and for the experience of the Philippines, I would like to now give the floor to Miss Vivian and Miss Polaris from Philippine Statistics Authority to present their experience on producing these tables, and maybe they can address the challenges while producing these statistics uh, from the available data sources in the country. Vivian, could you please, or Polaris, could you please continue with your presentation?
Yes. Good afternoon, members of the Technical Working Group on Disaster Statistics, and to everyone. So I am pleased to present to you the experience of the Philippines in trying to measure or quantify the spending for reducing the risk of disaster through the disaster risk reduction expenditure accounts. So this is like a satellite accounts to the system of national accounts. Fortunately, the PSA, or the Philippine Statistics Authority, is the one that is compiling the gross domestic product, or the national accounts, and this one now moving forward will serve as the satellite accounts to the national accounts. So my presentation will highlight on the following. One, the importance of the disaster risk reduction expenditure accounts. Two, what are the Philippine initiative in developing the DRRE? And just very briefly to share to you the sources and methods and the frameworks that we use. Then, how do we ensure that this data to support the DRRE are institutionalized in the Philippines? And then I will show you a little bit of the preliminary results that we have. And lastly, I will say a concluding remarks for our friends here in the with other members of the TWG, if we intend to compile the DRRE. Now, as you know, in the Philippines, the latest that we have seen from the World Disaster Risk Survey, I think this was in 2020, we saw that the Philippines is the sixth in the world among those countries that are often visited by disasters, typhoons, earthquakes, and so on. And also, the Philippines is the most uh, frequented by disasters such as earthquake, typhoons, floods, and so on. So with this, we try to look at some information how to really come up with statistics for the effective risk reduction and management in the country. So DRRE is one tool or a measure to support the country's national priorities. Of course, above all, the producing these statistics is we wanted to, of course, provide information to the decision makers, planners, with the aim to protect human lives and protect also the infrastructure, and most especially to conserve the environment and natural resources, and also to demonstrate how the DRRE statistics can be able to reduce how investments in disaster risk reduction not only will save lives but also reduce poverty. We have highlighted the concern for disaster and climate change in our Philippine Development Plan, also in our long-term vision for 2024, and also in our current Philippine socio-economic agenda. Now, before I go further, let me first apprise you on what is disaster after all. Why are we talking, everybody's talking about disaster? This is a serious disruption of the functioning of the community or a society involving human, economic, material, and environmental losses, and this impacts into the quality of life of the community and society. Now, the DRRE accounts, as earlier mentioned by our previous speaker, is a part of the framework of the DRSF, and it records transactions in monetary terms between the economic units that are considered in the DRRE related statistics. So these economic units, as mentioned, are the institutional units like the government, financial corporations, the non-financial corporations, and even the households. So the transactions of these units will concern uh, and will be undertaken with the main goal to preserve and protect society and the environment from the disaster. So this is how we are looking at the disaster and how these statistics is very important for the DRRE accounts. Now, we are looking at the different international frameworks that we have now. We consider, of course, at the first reference, we have the system of national accounts. The system of national accounts is an international framework that provides guidelines how to compile all the economic activities, records them, and look at the performance of the economy. In addition to that, we need also to link with frameworks like the System of Environment and Economic Accounts by the United Nations Statistics Division, including the ecosystem accounts. Of course, we saw that the DRRE should link with the preservation of the environment and natural resources. There are other frameworks that we maintain, especially we are subscribing to the Sendai framework. So this consists of the different goals and the different statistics or indicators, including the sustainable development goals. So all this we have these frameworks and put together in one database to also compile statistics on disasters. Of course, we have the disaster related statistics framework or the DRSF. This was this initiative started by the UN ESCAP. Now, let me mention about the initiative of the Philippines in trying to develop the DRRE statistics. So we started way back in 2015. We participated in the Philippines as a member of the Intergovernmental Expert Working Group that highlights on trying to finalize the terminologies and indicators related to disaster. And this is under the UNDRR. Also, within that year, we also participated in the development of the Sendai framework. So after this, we participated also and won under the pilot country project of the UN ESCAP to test the framework for DRSF. So in this project, we have 4 countries as pilot: Philippines, Fiji, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. And that was in 2018. And we hosted also the expert group on disaster, where all countries in the Asia Pacific or within the pilot countries were invited to share their experiences. The following year, we saw that after the technical assistance coming from the UN ESCAP, and we were provided trainings, and we were provided guidance how to assess the data, then we say maybe the Philippines is already ready to compile the DRR statistics. But this time, focusing mainly on the DRRE statistics. So we established the technical working group, and we continue to do the bilateral meetings, consultations, and it was in 2019 when we published the first estimate for the DRRE. But this is only focused on the public or on the government. And 2018, also after like 4 years, we were invited to do a presentation in the World ISI in Malaysia to share our experiences in developing the DRRE. In 2020, then we started expanding the coverage. This time, in addition to the government or to the public expenditure, we are now covering corporations and the households. And of course, we are participating in this existing technical working group in ESCAP, and we learn a lot from this group. And we are congratulating the ESCAP for really maintaining very religiously this technical working group and the regular meetings for countries to learn. 2021 onwards, then we improve on the data sources. We have the existing community-based monitoring system and also the family income and expenditure survey. So these are some of the additional information that we have to estimate expenditures of households. So in a nutshell, we have like 5 years to develop the DRRE expenditure accounts in the Philippines. So prior to the development of the DRRE statistics, as pilot country under the UN ESCAP, we participated also in trying to look at exactly what are those data that are available in the Philippines. This is following also the Sendai framework. And we found out that not all the data that we would need are available. So that we tried to look at some of the proxy indicators. There are a list of data that we would need, but we saw that there are only like 30%, 33% of the total data that we need that are available during that time of the UN ESCAP project. So from here, we try to address the problems. First, trying to address the problems on data gaps. Second, trying to look at some proxy indicators, how to represent this required data. And third, look at those data that are overlapping, duplicating, and conflicting statistics. Now, we follow the frameworks, the disaster-related statistics framework developed by the UN ESCAP. And this is exactly the same framework that we are, I think, being subscribed, promoted by the ESCAP. And this includes, on the next slide, this includes the statistics. This includes the statistics that supports the DRRE. This is very important because we saw in the earlier presentations that we need to look at them by the institutional sector, government, financial, non-financial, households, and even look at those that are coming to the Philippines in terms of the countries from the rest of the world and transfers from the central government to the local government. This slide will tell you the type of disaster statistics that we would need. These are statistics that we need before the onset of the disaster, during the onset of the disaster, after the onset of the disaster. And the pink color here, this was already articulated earlier by the previous speakers, and this will now be the general view of how the DRRE expenditure will be developed. So you have information from transfers meaning those that are provided by the rest of the world or by the central government or the local government. And you have, of course, international transfers from other countries that goes to the Philippines, international, and in terms of the overseas development assistance. And in addition to that, we have also information by the government, non-government expenditures by the corporations at the household. These things we have already available statistics information in the Philippines. However, we must admit that this data has yet a lot to be improved. Improved in terms of the coverage, improvement in terms of the quality that is being generated by the different agencies. Now, on the next slide, we are trying to look at the scope of the DRRE following the framework. These are the expenditures by the government and by the non-government. We call the expenditures of the government for the disaster risk reduction as the public expenditure. And this covers both the goods and the services by the government, all for the international government, for the local government, and for the corporations or the government-owned and controlled corporations, whether they are financial or non-financial. Private expenditure, then this will cover those household expenditures, the private corporations like non-financial corporations, the financial corporations like banks, non-banks, and also the non-governmental organization, or those foundations and cooperatives. This is the way initially how we categorize the expenditures. Now, in the course of our discussions with users of the DRRE statistics and also producers of the DRRE statistics, especially the Office of the Civil Defense or the disaster agency, they say that it is also very meaningful if we try to look at the dimension of disaster risk reduction expenditure in terms of the disaster prevention, disaster mitigation, disaster management, and disaster recovery. And this one, we try to look at the different concepts and the different activities that are available from the data sources. And we try to define them among these activities done by the different corporations, government, households, and so on. Which one are those that are for prevention, activities for mitigation, and so on. And from there, then we try to look at those statistics and consolidate them. Of course, members of the technical working group here, I don't need to elaborate all these definitions, but we can read this. But this is like very important also for disaster prevention. These are activities to prevent the disaster. Disaster mitigations, these are activities to reduce the existing disaster. Disaster management, this is more on for the disaster management agencies, organization and management of the resources and so on, recovery after the disaster. Now, we have identified the different sources of data. At the onset of the compilation of the DRRE accounts, the first step is to really assess whether data are available. If data are not available, what do we do next? So we look at all these data sources in terms of the disaster expenditures. First, for the government expenditure, we have the Commission on Audit. The Commission on Audit is the agency that audits all government agencies, and they have information in terms of the financial statement of expenditures, and also we have information on official development assistance audit report. So we receive expenditures from the different sources outside of the Philippines, for example, from the rest of the world, and these are being reported by the agencies that receive these funds, especially assistance for the Department of Health, for the Department of Social Welfare. Next is we have the Budget and Management Department. So the Department of Budget records all expenditures, whether they are for health, for disaster, for social welfare, and for economic purposes. So we try to look at them one by one. All the government agencies, 500 or less than 600 government agencies in the Philippines. Then we have a dedicated agency, which is the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, particularly the Office of the Civil Defense, and they put up regularly the situational reports every time there are disasters. How many are affected population, how many are reported dead, missing, and injured. So these are the basic information coming from the Office of the Civil Defense. Of course, our office, the Philippine Statistics Authority, provides some references in terms of the national accounts, how much expenditure we have for the total government, how much expenditures we have for health, and so on. So disaster is not included here, meaning it's not highlighted, but we have this DRRE satellite accounts, which is highlighting the expenditure for the risk reduction. And then we have the family income and expenditure survey, which benchmark the households and their expenditures in terms of all types of expenditures, including the purchases for disaster, and the census and survey of establishments. So these are the major information that we have. Now, on the next slide, uh, we have a long list of information, statistics that we have for the DRRE accounts. But how do we ensure that we are institutionalizing them? By institutionalization, we say that how do we ensure that all this data are produced regularly by the agencies on a regular basis, say annual, and whether they are annual or quarterly. Now, I would like to inform the members of the technical working group that in the Philippines right now, we have a pending bill in the Senate or that will institutionalize the Philippine ecosystem and natural capital accounting system. Among those included here are the environmental accounts, the ecosystem accounts, the risk reduction expenditure accounts, climate change, emission accounts, and so on. So all those environmental and ecosystem related accounts are very are highlighted, articulated in this bill to make sure that we will institutionalize them. This also bill mandates also the use of the environmental accounts in the policy and decision making, and designates also which agency is responsible, which agencies are the data producers, and which agencies are the users. And also very clear in the law that who are the agencies, what are the arrangements, and who will report to whom. So we have the Philippine Statistical Authority Board that oversees the implementation of the PENCAS. And also, the bill will provide funds, so making sure that all this data will be institutionalized. In addition to this law, to this bill, we are maintaining also an interagency committee specifically for environmental statistics. And under the environmental statistics, we have 6 technical working groups. One among them is the technical working group on climate change and disaster statistics. This is very important because this will serve as a venue to discuss problems, discuss concerns, issues about production, use, and dissemination of disaster statistics. We have a council also on disaster risk reduction management, and this is created by the NDRRMC, which is the Disaster Management Agency. We have also another mechanism, which is the Philippine Statistical Development Plan. And this is a document that outlines all the statistical programs, outlines all the statistical activities that we promise to deliver within the new administration of the Philippines under the new President Ramos. And of course, the PSA is the lodging house of all the SDG indicators for the Philippines. We have 155 unique indicators. This is in collaboration with all the agencies that supports the SDG goals, including the Sendai framework. We have a very powerful system of designated statistics which mandates the agencies which data you collect and when you will release this to avoid overlapping and duplication. And we have also the statistical survey review and clearance system. This is spearheaded by the Philippine Statistics Authority to ensure that all data passes through a rigid methodologies and sampling design, and also ensure that this data can be to ensure that other data gaps can be included when we review the questionnaire. So these are some of the mechanisms that we are following in the Philippines. Now, let me share to you some of the results of the DRRE accounts. As mentioned earlier from the beginning, the DRRE accounts will show you how much is the total spending on disaster risk reduction. So this is the main indicator or the key indicator which the DRRE will provide. So in the case of the Philippines, for example, uh, for the latest one that we have is 2021, and we are updating this for 2022. So we have a total of 687.29 billion pesos in 2021 spending by the government, spending by the Philippines. And this one is higher when you compare them from the previous 2020. So if you look at the rate of increase, so it's increasing by 58.3%. So it increased by more than 50%. This is just something to we can more or less conclude how the government efforts is really prioritizing the the reduction of the disaster in terms of increasing the expenditures. Now, another indicator that you can look at from the DRRE accounts is which areas spends the highest in terms of the thematic. Earlier, I mentioned that we are also generating information on disaster prevention, disaster mitigation, disaster management, and so on. So this DRRE will be able to provide you information how much you are spending for to prevent disasters, how much you are spending for during the recovery, how much you are spending for planning the disaster. So, for 2021, for example, disaster management uh, posted the highest percentage of the total spending. So, uh, out of the 400, 600, out of the total 687.21 billion, 46% of that is used for disaster management. So we spend a lot for trying to plan out, to manage this disaster, to make sure that this is prevented, and also to make sure that we recover easily. So after the disaster management expenditure, then the next highest spending is on disaster prevention and mitigation, and then spending on disaster recovery by 39.3% and 14.5% respectively. Then we look at some of the countries. We research on some neighbors that we have, but we realize that not everybody is doing the DRRE. We found out that I think only Australia, from the research that we have, is doing the DRRE accounts. And this is just to look at or compare how the Philippines is faring. So the DRRE in the Philippines, like we are accounting for the total expenditure in terms of prevention by 39%. And if you compare that also for for Australia, for example. So this is like for the prevention, hold on. So this is like 11% for the Australia. In terms of the disaster management, so this is sharing 46.2%. 46. And when we compare that to Australia, this is 45% in terms of their total expenditure. So this is just like to show us that I think we have uh, more or less like the same trend, whether to look at country experiences, that 46 and 45 is almost closer. Yeah. And then another indicator, which I think this is a very important indicator for us, is how much is the contribution of this expenditure or to reduce disaster risk to the GDP, to the gross domestic product. Now, the gross domestic product provides you all the total expenditures that you use for the reference or for 2021, for example. So you produce goods and services to mitigate, prevent disaster, and how much expenditure you are spending. In the case of the Philippines, as you see in the earlier presentations graph, that we are like increasing in terms of the expenditure by 58%. So in terms of the share to the total economy, the expenditure is 3.5%. In the past year, for example, this is like 0.7%. And it was only in 2020 when we continue to increase by 2.4% and 3.5%. This is an alert to the government or to our decision makers that we are prioritizing also the reduction of disaster, so that we can show them, we can see them in the indicator in terms of the expenditures. So these are some of the key results that we have. Of course, there are a lot more of available tables that we can show you, but in the framework that we have, the results here are consolidated, aggregated, but we have individual tables, satellite tables that we can put up, maybe not on this presentation, but maybe in a different venue where we can come together, members of the technical working group of disaster statistics, and step by step we can do this together. So for finally, just for our concluding remarks, we saw that not everybody is compiling the disaster risk reduction expenditure accounts. But what is really very important is to really spend more time in assessing the data that you have, available data. Estimation of the DRRE accounts is just like following a framework. But what is very important is to look at the data, address those challenges, data gaps, data problems, in terms of the quality of the data, in terms of the comprehensiveness of the data, and the comprehensiveness and consistency of this data. Once you assess this data, then you put them together in one database. What are exactly the strengths and the weaknesses of this data? Identify them, and there are gaps, of course. Disaster statistics is very far from the data that we have, like economic data, social data. Disaster is something new for everyone. So we have a lot of identified data gaps. We need to address them. How to address them? This is exactly the expertise in terms of the statistical office. How well to really close the gaps in term, and then make sure that they are comprehensive and we are presenting a consistent data. Now, when we started developing the DRRE, it took us a while, like 5 years, no? 5 years to put up the DRRE accounts. We spend a lot of time for 5 years to do capacity building. So we are very happy and we are very grateful to the UN ESCAP. They started this all in the Philippines, and they several times they keep coming back to the Philippines just to provide technical assistance and training for us in the Philippine Statistical Authority, but not only for PSA, but also to the producers of data and the users of disaster statistics. And this, we are focusing on the concepts and definitions of the disaster statistics, because this is a satellite accounts, the system of national accounts, so that the concepts and definition should be aligned with the system of national accounts. So I think this is my last slide, and thank you very much, everyone. I put up some references that we have, and this is for our the members of the technical working group. Again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian, for your insightful presentation that provide us some understanding on how to begin this work and how to carry out all the production of this related risk reduction expenditure statistics. I would like to ask you a question on the increase in expenditures you mentioned, but we see after 2019 a high rise in the expenditures. I guess it is not related with an increase in the coverage or scope of the activities you covered while identifying and computing the expenditures, but it is what I see from the graphs that it is mainly depending on the disaster management expenditures. But we have covering here generally the disaster preparedness and disaster response and emergency management activities. So is it the rise stemming from the the tendency or awareness of government on spending muchly for preparedness activities, or did the country experience some disasters after 2019 and spent more on response and emergency activities?
Yes, this is both, meaning the Philippines, the increase in share of from 2.4% to 3.5%, the share of the GDP, and the growth of more than 58% is attributed most on number one, increasing expenditure due to the government is now very much aware, and the efforts is now to really prevent disaster. As you know, we have a lot of lessons learned during the typhoons, no? In 2013 and also 2019, we have a serious disasters, and we have a series of serious disasters, and we know that when there are disasters, we have a higher reported deaths, missing people, and also it increase our poverty level. So with this, the government has really increased their share. Number one, in terms of the disaster management and planning. we saw that most importantly, you have to have a very good planning and management so that at the onset of the disaster, you will prevent this disaster. There are like infrastructure construction by the government to prevent flooding. In 2013, when there was a serious uh, disaster, typhoon surge in another region, Region 8, and we have a reported deaths of 6,000 people. So they try to put up like a concrete barrier and plant mangroves just to like prepare for the disaster. And this has been going on now, not only in one region where the serious disasters occurred, but also in the different parts where there are disaster prone areas. So that I guess this is already and we created a department, the dedicated department on disaster risk reduction. So the efforts of the government is to manage well to prevent disaster.
Mhm. Thank you. Also, as I see from the presentation, Philippines is producing some data on economic loss, like material impacts. So, did you have conducted or something like a communication strategy to increase the awareness of the government or the public by putting together the economic loss data with the expenditure data to present some insight? Maybe if you find a reverse relationship, maybe you don't have too much time series of data, but it can be a good communication to inside the country, maybe to put the expenditures with the human loss data or economic loss data in the same graphic to present some meaningful data and the benefit of spending more on this disaster risk reduction activities. Did you conduct such a activity, or do you plan it? Or another question maybe, do you notice or heard any use of this data in policy use in your country?
Okay. The first question is whether we have information in economic loss. In the Philippine Statistics Authority, or even in the Philippines, this is yet a scattered information, meaning these are done ad hoc by the
Mhm.
different non-government agencies and those that provides funding for specific area, project-based. But for the Philippine Statistics Authority, we have not yet done economic damage due to disaster, economic loss due to disaster. We have like ad hoc information about this, but these are reports like damage due to disaster, damage in agriculture, damage in crops, livestock, and poultry. We have that, but these are reports from our field offices. So it's just ad hoc, meaning uh, it refers only to a certain area, to certain for agriculture only, for crops and so on. But looking at the entire economic damage in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of agriculture and so on, we have not yet developed them. But this is very important, as you mentioned. We can look at them side by side in terms of the expenditures so that this will be more meaningful. The analysis will be more expanded if we can come up. This is one thing that we wanted to develop. And if there are experts on this, maybe within the technical working groups or international partners, then we would like to develop this. This is one of the indicators put up in the Sendai framework, also indicators put up in the SDGs initially, but we have not yet institutionalized them due to possibly data are not readily available. Technical expertise to do this is not readily available. Thank you.
Thank you. So one last question from my side, and then I will ask the floor if other participants have any question to you. Can you elaborate us about the challenges you faced and how you overcome them during this identification of the activities to estimate the risk reduction expenditures from available data sources? Maybe from your national accounts, maybe the records of the other responsible institutions in the country.
Yes. When we started when we participated in the UN ESCAP project in 2015 until 2017, this is the time when we realize that data on disaster has to be put together, assessed, simply because there are a lot of need for this, for decisions and for program implementations and so on. So we realize that we look at them, but it's not readily available. Data may be there in the files, but they are not consolidated. They are not put in one database for the users like the PSA that would need them. So they are stuck there and you need to consolidate them. There are reports by the different local government units submitted to the Department of Health, submitted to the Department of Social Welfare, and so on. So in one single database, we don't have that. So that's one challenge. So how did we address this? We have the technical working group. We do like bilateral meetings with the OCD, Office of the Civil Defense, no? Trying to discuss one by one how they get their data, and if possible, once they have this data, to forward this to us. And the agency, disaster management agency, previously is also participating in this technical working group. But recently, they are no longer participating. No? So we partner with them. We don't have data in PSA. They have data. So religiously, we follow on to them. They are very cooperative. They are very friendly. But of course, we know that if you are in the management, disaster management agency, data are not your priority. First, you save the lives of the people. You save the infrastructure, the houses, and so on. And then later on, once the disaster is over, then they will go back to their office and consolidate them. Look at the data. How many are missing? How many are affected? That's the way things are done in the Philippines. Second, there are data we saw in the project under the UNESCAP. They are duplicating. They are overlapping. Example, there are reports by the Department of Health that records the number of missing people. In the in the management, disaster management, they are report another number different in terms of the number of missing people and so on. No? It appears that there are like four entities or agencies that are generating the same set of data but different levels of this data. Now, we realize it's not really that number one, the timing of their capture of data. The definition that they say, if you are missing by 1 day, then 1 week you are already reported as deaths. In another agency, you are still a missing person. These things, no, there are like concepts behind that need to be. This is very important because The way we are doing the technical working group on disaster statistics, these are some of the concerns that we can also develop a standardized definitions, harmonized for countries to follow. Since right now we have yet to wait for that, so these are some of the existing challenges that we have. So for the PSA in developing the DRRE, we just assess out of these four data source, which one are more stronger? That more likely, from our validation perception, this is okay. This one is very much understated. This one is very much overstated. We do the average. These things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian, for the detailed assessment of this question. And I would like to ask the floor to our participants if they have any question or comment on the presentation, on the information you provided us so far. If anyone has any question, could you please raise your hand and ask your question? I think
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
yes.
while waiting for the question, I would like to
Mhm.
reiterate that I received a message from a colleague Polaris that the highest expenditure we saw like 2020 to 2021 because of the COVID expenditures on the COVID
Uh,
and the
yeah.
COVID-19 pandemic. We consider them as a disaster.
Mhm.
So that's the very reason which everybody has experienced, and this is part of the DRRE COVID
Mhm.
spending. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Thank you very much for this addition also. And I see no hands up to now from the floor. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I will give the floor to to my colleague Paul to close the session maybe, and also inform for the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Afan. Thank you very much, Vivian.
We lost. We cannot hear you.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
lost you. We lost you.
Yeah, thank you. Now I can see myself. That was just microphone. Sorry for all the technical from our end. The cable didn't really, yeah. Oh, God, help us too much. But yeah, I would like to thank you again, like Vivian and PSA team for very, very interesting, insightful information. And yeah, like of course, like it's very uh new, well, not new. I mean, like hearing like how long you have developed the RIE accounts, but like yes, still like not too many people like have done this. So still like when we think of DRE, we always think of PSA definitely. Yeah. So thanks again for joining us today and sharing the information. Um, as usual, for our next meeting, we will hold it on the last Wednesday of November. The topic is yet to be identified, but we will update you on the information, like on the topic of the next meeting, and we will share the materials, the recording and the presentation of this meeting on the website. So we will circulate that uh, via email. Yeah. Right. Okay. With this, we would like to thank all of you for joining us today, particularly the BSA team again. And wish you a pleasant afternoon. Thank you very much.